don't think I could ever bill her in that sense. There will be plenty of students here, I'm sure, as there are already. I'm sure there'll be even more. Last time Tia was here, she did tremendous service for both the center and our students here at the university in satisfying all of their curiosity about the work that she and Pixar do. Just to say a few words about Tia, she joined Pixar in 1993 as a digital painter, working on their first feature film, Toy Story. Subsequently, she worked as shader art director on another film, Bugs Life, Monsters Incorporated, and Cars, and she was responsible for specifying the color and texture of every object modeled for a film. And if you've seen these films, you can imagine how many objects that must be. Tia is currently working on a future Pixar project as art director. Prior to Pixar, Tia was a background painter at Disney Feature Animation, where she worked on a variety of acclaimed animated films such as Tron, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast, in the previous era of animated film, we might say. Tia is a graduate of the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and she currently resides in Moraga, California, with her husband Paul and her dog Orbit. Without further ado then, I would like to introduce Tia Kratter. This one work any better? Is this better? Or is this better? Hello?
Or I could just yell. All right, so you can tell me if you can't hear me. But be forewarned, I can yell really loud. Welcome. It's nice to see so many people on a Monday night. It's a beautiful night out there, and the Raider game is on. So I appreciate you being here. Let's get started. I'm going to talk for 35 or 40 minutes. I'm going to give away a couple of prizes, and then we'll do some questions. If I can answer your questions or make up something that sounds convincing, I will. All right. Here we go. Pixar is in Emeryville, California, which is just across the Bay Bridge in the eastern part of the bay near Cal. This particular site was built in the year 2000. Before that, we lived in Point Richmond in the northern part of the bay, and before that, up in San Rafael, way, way back in the 80s. Pixar was owned by Lucasfilms and wasn't doing very well for Lucasfilms, so George Lucas put it up for sale, and Steve Jobs bought it for $8 million. For many, many years, Steve paid for our losing business at Pixar with his own money and would pay himself $1 a year, just like he did at Apple. So I don't think I'm touching anything, but so I apologize. And if worst case, I'll just talk. So here's our new site, and many of you that have seen Pixar films might know that this Luxo lamp is our logo, and it appears at the beginning of all our films. So this is the entrance to our building. The other thing that is repetitive is in every film, we feature the Pizza Planet truck. So if you're bored and you've seen the film 3 or 4 or 15 times, you can start looking for the Pizza Planet truck in each of our films. And yes, even though the current film Brave was set in the 11th century, it does appear in the film. This is, as you enter Pixar, you enter a main atrium. Steve's theory was that everybody will meet in the middle. So if you're walking in the building and look to your right, you'll see offices and meeting areas. Generally, and I'm stereotyping now, animation, story, and art live over on the right side of the building, and generally, the very smart people live on the left side of the building, the PhDs, the people who understand calculus, things that I have no idea about. So I live in the art department. I'm on the right-hand side, and Steve encouraged us to all cross paths in the middle. You know what I'm going to do? Original. Now can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Cross your fingers. Originally, Steve had felt that another great place to meet and discuss ideas were in the bathrooms. So originally, he, very, very hands-on, he intended to have Pixar have only one men's bathroom and one women's bathroom. At the time when we built this studio, there were about 500 people, and the women revolted and said, please, please, Steve, we need more bathrooms than just one. So now there are 4 within this building, and at one time we were up to 1,200 people working in this one building. Every time we have a film coming out, we, sort of dress up the atrium per whatever film. So this was for Cars. And this is my favorite room in the entire building. We have what's called the brown bag kitchen. You go in the morning, and every single type of sugary cereal that my mom wouldn't let me eat is in this room. And you can go in and you can have your own cereal, whatever mixture you want, every single morning. It's a real treat. This mic is much better. This is a typical artist's office. Bob Pauley is a great friend of mine. He was the original designer of Buzz Lightyear. He is not the cleanest guy in the world, but when I asked him if I could take photos of his office to show you, he said, give me a half an hour to clean up. So this is his cleaned up version of his office. It's great. What's really funny is I could go into Bob's office and say, you know that picture of Buzz Lightyear when he takes off in Toy Story 1 off the rocket, and Bob can reach into all those piles of paperwork and pull out exactly the right drawing. So it may not look organized to you and me, but for Bob, it works perfectly. You can see he was working on Cars, and so we found the front of an original Mini and dragged it up the street, and he made it into his desk lamps. Very cool and creative guy. This is Pete Docter's office. Pete Docter is the director of Monsters, Inc. and Up. Every time he moves to another office, he totally redesigns it. Little tip for you guys, that looks like rock. All it is butcher paper crumpled up and stapled to the wall. So easy, with a little dramatic lighting. This is John Lasseter's office. Now, John Lasseter is the creative lead at Pixar. He and I worked at Disney together. That's how I was fortunate enough to get the job at Pixar. John and I are about the same age. He's skyrocketed, and I have sort of plateaued. I don't envy him, though, because he spends about 2 days a week up at Pixar guiding us in filmmaking, and the other 3 days down at Disney, where he has the same job as a creative lead in their animated films, and he is also a creative lead for theme parks. So he's a busy man. And I have to say, I love his office because I've never actually seen him really working there. But it's really good to look at. All right. I am going to ask you to help me play a little game here. I would like you to all stand up, please, if you can. If you can't, you can just raise your hand. Either way, I would like you to stand up and stay standing for each of the films that you have seen done by Pixar. As soon as there's one that you have not seen, please sit down and you stay seated, okay? So once you're down, you're out. I'm going to see how many of you have seen all of our films. There's Toy Story, Bug's Life, Toy Story 2. You guys are doing great. Monsters, Inc., Nemo, one of my favorites. Incredibles, one of your favorites, clearly. Cars, Ratatouille, Wall-E, Up, Toy Story 3, Cars 2, few went down, but you're still doing very well. Oh, I love the raised hand. Good work. And now Brave. Wow, you guys are my favorite people here. Good job. And to be honest, I thought, and I'm stereotyping, I thought it'd be mostly those of you that are under 25. But you've got a great mix here, and I'm really, really impressed. So thank you for seeing all of our films. That's pretty good. All right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we make these films. I'm going to cheat and be very brief and skip over some really neat people like Brad Weinmuller, probably. Normally, it takes an art department about 4 years to create a film. So when you see that first line, 4 years from film out is the day that we put a film out to you, the public. So 4 years before that is when I usually start on a film. That's called the year of play. I take 2-hour lunches. I get to go on fancy trips to do research. I get to sketch and paint and make messes and go home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 years from film out is the year of happiness. I still feel really engaged in the film. It's fun. There's new ideas. We're starting to hone in and get a little bit closer to what we want to achieve on our film. 2 years from film out, the year of reality, our producer comes into the art department and says, it's time to make this film. Suddenly, I'm coming in from 7 in the morning and stay till about 5 at night. I might take a quick lunch, but it's at Pixar. No more margaritas, no more playing around. I'm actually trying to show that I'm getting work done. 1 year from film out is when all hell breaks loose. I don't see my family. I spend about 12 hours at Pixar working. Then I go home and answer emails for the rest of the evening. That's the year from hell. I've worked on, I think, 17 or 18 films now over between Disney and Pixar, and never once has this scenario changed. It's always hard the last year. The only problem was that on Brave, which I worked on, it took 6 years. And so that's the longest film I've ever worked on. Brave, I started in 2006, finished about 6 months, 5 months ago in 2012. I would say the year of happiness is what repeated. It was really a fun film. So at the very beginning, the art department works, and I'm going to show you this in the eyes of Brave. So those of you who saw it may see some familiar things. Those of you who haven't seen it, maybe I can interest you in looking at the DVD when it comes out in November. We start out with these very tiny black and white sketches, trying to figure out the composition. Our sketches are about this big, so really small and really fast. Just trying to figure out a language for the look of the film. Even here, if you look carefully, you're going to see a lot of long, curved lines and shapes. So keep an eye out for that because you'll see it emerge in our shapes in Brave. Sometimes we'll take an image and we'll establish it even more, constantly honing in on quick sketches that define our world. We're not trying to replicate reality. There are other movie houses that do that. We want to take what we know and caricature it or stylize it somewhat and still yet let it be believable. This is a drawing that my boss, Steve Pilcher, sort of the overseer of the department, did. I liked it. This was from the Year of Happiness, and did a tiny 1 by 2 inch painting, about 15 of them, same drawing, but quick little color roughs, and picked one I liked and then did a final larger oil painting by it. Really, really fun. All these hundreds and hundreds of paintings start going through reviews, and the director picks what he or she likes. Around 2006, and we've done this for all of our films, we always go on a research trip. Now, when I was on Bug's Life, we basically went into the back parking lot, looked for dirt, and got down really close with our cameras and stuff and took pictures. That was pretty cool, but meanwhile, the people that were on Nemo got to get their scuba license, and then they went to Hawaii and looked at all, underwater at all this stuff. Well, I wasn't too bitter until I got put on Cars. And then they asked me to please go into the back parking lot of Pixar and take pictures of the dust that's on top of all the cars. And so by then I thought, then the Ratatouille people were off in Paris at four-star restaurants eating all this fancy food, and I'm still working on Cars. So when Brave came around, I finally lucked out and got to go to Scotland, which was fabulous. There were 2 trips of us. One went in 2006 in August. One went in 2007 in late September. We were looking for different vegetation and the colorings to see what we could pull from the seasonal shift.
Welcome next.
The gentleman on your right is our director, Mark Andrews.
Great.
This is my room.
Those standing stones are out on the Isle of Skye, and they gain a great significance in our film, a place of magic and change. So what became apparent to us is that even though we have Google, we have the internet, and we can get a lot of information really quickly now, there's a real great value in actually going somewhere and seeing it. So first thing we sort of deal with are the landscapes and the sets. This picture is really iconic of what we discovered. So when I was doing my initial research on Brave, I thought everything was like the St. Andrews golf course over there, and there was this perfectly, perfect equal height of grass all over Scotland. And so my job as the person who specs the colors and the textures was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to go take some golf course pictures over there, or of that beautiful big bank of grass across the street, and I'm done. What we realized when we laid down in the heather is that you drop about a foot into the ground. Not into the ground, but into the foliage. There's this big complex mixture of grasses, heather, rock emerging up through the ground, And all those things began to really influence the way we wanted to show the film. We didn't want Brave to be any rocky place, in the world. We wanted you to know visually that we were in Scotland. And so there are a few things we did to try and push that idea. But you can see that almost every surface in that ancient land starts to get covered in vegetation. This is great for the art department. We love this kind of complexity. It makes our world organic and chaotic. It is a nightmare for our smart people because the computer is really, really good at creating things that are straight and perfect, like these walls. What it's harder to do are irregular shapes, and that's all we threw at them this whole time. So these are all paintings from our art department still, and we end up handing things in all different forms over to the technical team. This castle is called Dunnottar. It's on the North Sea on the east coast of Scotland. Originally, we wanted to set the castle down on the edge of a loch, but once we visited this castle, it gained such prominence and it became so strong in itself that we totally switched it over and built it up onto this cliff. These are called brocks. Before castles as we know them from Disneyland and such, brocks were these single cylinders with stone on the outside and on the inside. And then it was filled in the middle between these two layers with more stone. That was the insulation they had back then. So we tried to really look back at more ancient castles rather than your view of a Disney castle. We were really trying to look at that age-old world. This is a sculpture that's about as big as this table. A lot of times, instead of doing 1,000 drawings, if we do a sculpture out of clay, we can roll it down to the technical team and they can see it from all different angles. Those toothpicks you see in there are just representations of trees. We didn't want to model, all these little trees, so we just stick them in there. But you can get underneath it, around it. We'll take it outside and shoot it during sunset to see how the light casts and shadow casts on the model. It really, if it weren't for our sculptors at Pixar, we'd be doing a heck of a lot more drawings. And then we'll take photographs of that model and start putting layer over layer of tracing paper over it, refining little details like where was the bathroom? They had a bathroom back there. Where did we put it? Where's the entry to the kitchen? Is it different from the main entry? Yes, because you don't want to see a lot of gutted pigs going through your main entrance. So all these things we try to figure out way in the beginning so that if it comes up later in the story, we've got it covered.